Top of the morning to you, ma'am. We are extremely honored to have a bit of your time for this interview. Before we begin, I would like to give you a brief introduction as to what Advancing Northeast is. Advancing Northeast is a digital initiative by the Northeastern Council, the Ministry of Development of Northeastern Region, and the Northeastern Development Finance Corporation. It is designed to be a one-stop solution that provides information and guidance to the youths of the Northeast by creating a learning ecosystem in terms of education, employment, and entrepreneurship. To easily facilitate an organic connection, we host career talks where we bring in industry experts from the Northeast itself to serve as role models and mentors to the youth. For this interview, our career talk will focus on the importance of Indigenous people's rights and issues, and how one, especially the youth, can walk towards implementing this crucial objective. To enlighten us on this course, we have Ma'am Mayfereen Ryntathiang, a social worker and human rights activist, and the president of the non-governmental organization, Grassroot Shillong. To start us off, could you give us a short recap on your academic life, ma'am?
Yeah, hello, good morning, Lisa. And thank you so much for roping me into this interview on this initiative of, the Northeastern region. So, and thank you to Northeastern Council too for creating this initiative, although it's virtual now, and we hope to connect much more at a personal level. So, Lisa, I've just completed my master's in English literature, my favorite subject of all times, and also I've just since I work in this field and I love working in this field, the work that I do, social work and human rights. So I top it up with human rights studies, both from IGNU and Columbia University.
Ma'am, I think your answer has segued smoothly into our second question, which was, how did you become a part of the social service sector? I guess we will move on to our next question, which is about your NGO, Grassroot Shillong. Could you give us more information on it, its aims, the vulnerable groups it works for, its projects, or anything else to note?
Grassroot is an Indigenous people's rights-based organization. We've always started with a rights-based approach since the beginning, since 2007, when we first registered. Uh, we work in the states of Meghalaya and Manipur as of now. Manipur in Mapao and Unghon villages, and in Meghalaya all over the state. We've covered all over the state in Meghalaya. And the kind of work that we do is mostly livelihood, skill building, not just saying skill building to get young people ready for jobs, but skill building in upgrading and enhancing indigenous crafts, indigenous looms, and indigenous knowledge, vis-a-vis bamboo crafts or winemaking or floriculture, etc. So that's one. And number two is we work with women also on creating and empowering them to have that decision-making power in the field of governance as well, not just in the field of, within quotes, the kitchen. So we want women to also be outside the kitchen because we believe very much in the enterprising and intellectual mindsets of the women. And also we trained traditional institutions like the local Darbar here uh, I would, if it is in Meghalaya or the Nokma in Garo Hills. So we train them on basically on these indigenous laws, like the UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, vis-a-vis the sixth schedule that we have in Meghalaya, vis-a-vis the local customary laws of how these laws are all interlinked together, and how local governance system, like the traditional system, local traditional system, can work towards building a access uh, rights accessible community. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
Thank you so much, ma'am. This endeavor of yours is quite noble. It also ties up especially well with what the state of Northeast is, right? Our culture is matrilineal and matrilocal. However, from what we can see, it's merely a figurehead of power. And what you do,
Mm,
I believe, is taking back power, making it something more substantial, and that definitely should be applauded.
thank you.
Our question next would be, what are the challenges that you have faced when you started working out in this field of work?
One of the biggest challenges is getting the community's trust, because a lot of communities, when I say it can be rural or urban, a lot of communities have been introduced or have been promised to have A, B, and C development, but none of those were actually fulfilled. So that's why when we entered these communities, it was very difficult for us to gain that trust back. That's one of the challenges. And the next challenge is getting, the right people in the field. It can be both from the village or from the locality or from the team in grassroots who actually understands the passion of upgrading and uplifting the indigenous people. And number three is, of course, financial, but not to a certain extent. When I say financial, because I believe that when we have, the passion, the wheels are kind of invented on their own. So financials to a very little extent, but not as much as, having to build trust with the communities that we work with.
It is, I guess, a given fact that mobilizing is quite difficult, especially for something for the people, right? To especially have a group that works by the people for the people, it does take time to mobilize. And like you mentioned, it's not just the financial aspect of it. However, it depends on the passion as well as people's attitudes to it.
Mm,
In
you're right.
terms
Yeah.
in terms of that, I feel our state, we are quite laid back in these rights because we've had certain freedoms awarded to us being a tribal state. We haven't had to fight tooth and nail for the rights we currently do have. So I feel as
Mm,
a community, we do fall short when trying to mobilize for a larger goal that may affect maybe a smaller community, but on a wider range, it doesn't affect as many people. So the interest level, it barely meets the standard for it to become a powerful movement that can change the lives of everybody in the state.
right.
So, with that, my question is, how far would you say Meghalaya and maybe the Northeast as well has come in terms of recognizing and working for and towards Indigenous peoples' issues and rights?
Mm, rights, not as far. But the thing is this, Lisa, is in Meghalaya or Northeast generally, the term indigenous is still not used as strong as as in the Americas. We are still governed by that definition of tribal. That's why we have the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, which is from the central government, and hence we call ourselves tribal. Even though we have the sixth schedule in Meghalaya, the sixth schedule in Meghalaya is a self-determination tool, where I would say the government of India has given the state of Meghalaya to govern on its own. So when we read the sixth schedule, it's all about that, the self-governance system. But we still call ourselves tribals. When tribals can connotate a different meaning, whereas indigenous connotates, that strong ownership of your own land, your own identity, and your own culture, and wisdom for sure. So as far as that valuing and empowering the indigenous communities of Meghalaya is concerned, that part has not been done yet. So that's why when we say rights, it doesn't necessarily mean giving us a shopping or sorry, a shop license, but It means that we have right over our land when there's a border dispute. We have rights over our land and actually work from an indigenous point of view in consultation with the local heads as to where the borders dispute have been since time immemorial, and not just have Mr. Conrad Sangma or Mr. Chief Minister from Assam, decide for the fate of the land of the indigenous people. So when can we actually understand that indigenous communities have rights? Indigenous communities, wisdom, customary laws, and knowledge have to be taken into account before we talk these these big politics, which doesn't serve the people at all. So that way, I think government of Meghalaya needs to work much harder in identifying these indigenous rights of ours.
Thank you, ma'am. You've given us food for thought. I honestly assumed that the word tribal and the word indigenous were synonymous. However, as you've mentioned, it's not one and the same, and how I
Right.
guess a definition can lead to a different cause of action. And you've definitely put
Mm.
into light this perspective, and I thank you for that. Uh, I would like to ask you, drawing from your personal experience, are there any tips or advice you can offer viewers watching this interview on how they would take up activism? Maybe you could highlight something that is crucial or mandatory, for example, skills or educational background that could serve as a framework.
Mm, for that, Lisa, the number one ingredient is see, we're talking indigenous communities here. So the number one ingredient is valuing your own identity. That is activism already on its own. That is a revolution already on its own. And not be allowed to be westernized or saffronized by, by either thoughts. We are indigenous and we believe that we are. So that is already a revolution. And number two is, of course, when we look at the surroundings, we voice our concerns, irrespective of what educational background you have. You can know or you cannot know English or Khasi or Jantia or Garo for Meghalaya or any other languages. But if you can just voice out your concerns on the different atrocities and different rights violations of the indigenous people, that already is activism. And number three is, yes, for you to actually be able to move legally, I would suggest that we keep reading if you don't, not necessarily study in an institution, but keep reading on indigenous people and indigenous people's rights, the kind of violations that we have gone through, and what kind of strategies are we going to use to actually combat these violations. So, but yes, there are universities now that are offering courses on cultural studies, on indigenous rights, but I would suggest that you study human rights if at all you want to go academically and opt for indigenous people's rights as a special paper.
Thank you, ma'am. Whilst education is important since knowledge is power, it is a confidence booster that it does not, I guess, the educational level that one possesses does not equate to how much of an impact that they can create. Because what we've seen is that these grassroots level community building, I mean, a lot of them don't have the educational qualifications as, some institutions would mandate, right? But it's just their passion, their advocacy, their activism, the way they take up, I guess, change for their community. It
Right.
has nothing to do with what one has done, I guess, educational wise. It's just how you are as a person, what standing you would like to take in the community. And
Mm,
I hope that this encourages the youths that studies is not the only thing, especially since our community is more focused on, okay, you need the right grades, you need the right educational background. But it's nice to see that soft skills are equally important, if not more. Our question now is that we have word that you are organizing yet another youth parliament. Could you share more information on this current youth parliament, its agendas and aims? And maybe as well give us more specifics, and we would love to be able to promote this youth parliament on this platform.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa, for that. And I'm very excited actually about this youth parliament. It's because at Grassroot, we also believe in building young people's voices. But a lot of these voices don't get listened to because we use it in a very taunting manner. So why not use it in a more intellectual manner? So the youth parliament is its main objective is to actually bring democracy back again into the foray of the political, social, and economic system, where as you can see, experience now, that democracy in India is diminishing day by day. You know, we don't get to voice out our concerns as much as we used to. Uh, we were afraid that if we voice our concerns, there will be internet ban. If we voice our concerns, there will be a ban of your channel or institutions or organizations. So why not use this voice in a more strategic manner? So the youth parliament is going to aim at building these young leaders into tackling the intellectual, tackling the social, and tackling the economic perspective of how a society can actually advocate for what is rightfully theirs. And we're very excited because for the first time, we're also going to have people from Jaintia Hills. It's going to be very Jaintia centric youth parliament because we don't want it to be all the time Shillong centric. But yes, we want to bring this knowledge also to the people of Jaintia and Garo Hills as well, and create that sense of who they are as a leader, not necessarily as a political leader where you have to be the chief minister, the minister, etc., but who they are as a leader at the community level and build them up at different levels. And why not reach the political level where we can make decisions that uh, will will impact our people more positively. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to embark on this journey with the Jaintia Hills youth, with the Joa youth especially, and work with them as to how we can build that sense of belonging, sense of ownership, and sense of leadership for the community they come from.
Uh,
So the Youth Parliament is going to be organized in July, Lisa, from the 22nd to the 23rd of this month.
Thank you, ma'am. May we know the venue? Maybe some people who've seen this interview may want to attend. Could you give us maybe on what topics you'll be touching so that they can maybe take time out of their schedule to attend if they can?
Right. The venue is going to be at Mission Compound Community Hall, July, and the topics that we're going to cover will be around advocacy, democracy, the UNDRIP, self-determination, and the building an authentic voice for young leaders.
Thank you, ma'am. And I would assume since it would be a whole day session, right? So it will begin likely in the morning at
Right.
10,
10.
10:30 a.m. And I guess it will be concluding at 4:30.
Right, right.
So just in case any viewers out there who stumbled upon this interview would like to join, please do. You're most welcome to join. All right, we are moving on now. So, from your personal observation, how can one inculcate a sense of responsibility in society? Since oftentimes it is merely verbal support, what can be done to motivate action for good cause? And how could this serve as advice to the aspirants out there?
I think voicing out is good, but voice out with, let me just phrase it this way. I always believe that when we pray, it should be with an action, so I call it prayers with wheels. So the same thing with us. If you want to voice the concerns, voice it with wheels. Use your creativity. If you're an artist, use art to campaign. If you are a writer, use your pen to campaign. If you are a thinker, use your pen to campaign. And if you are an activist, also use your voice and influence to campaign. So build that. It can start with a very small, campaign. It can start with just a one-person campaign, but don't worry about that. It's what matters is that you are raising those concerns. As long as those concerns are not only mm, for your personal benefit, but for the benefit of the community and the many generations to come after. So your actions have to speak today till the many generations to come. So that's why when we do these campaigns, it has to be a well thought campaign that reaches and percolates to the different generations that we may not probably be able to see. So build that action and inculcate that mindset of questioning. It's okay to question, because I remember when we were younger, we were never allowed to question our elders because it's bad manners, to question our elders. But inculcate that questioning mind. There's no harm in asking, why is fire lighted? There's no harm in asking, why do the river runs down and it doesn't runs up? So it's okay to ask those questions, because these questions will start and will begin your thought process into questioning the many atrocities of your communities as well.
Thank you, ma'am, for that. I believe that's a wonderful perspective. Since, like you've mentioned, there's not just one way for activism or advocacy. So I guess people just assume that, oh, we're just leaving it to the activists to take up change. However, as you've
Yes.
mentioned, anybody in any field can take up activism and do what they do best if they can put their foot forward for, I guess, for the first step. And that, I guess, that would definitely encourage some youths who may not be adept at public speaking. It may not be their forte, but they can maybe use a different mode of activism, especially now with a lot of these digital tools provided to us. Our voices reach out on a much larger scale. We can
Mm,
even cause these global changes because the world has become this global village. And I believe,
right.
although there are several negatives, I always believe in seeing the positive in things. So I feel that we can definitely use anything and spin it into a more positive light. And I would like to thank you for that, for, I guess, encouraging the youth, encouraging anybody who watches this that they can become a part of this change. It's not just limited to a certain person, but especially
Right.
working together as a group, you can make waves. And who else better to make waves than us, the youth?
Yes, very true.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for so much insight. I would like to give you the opportunity as well right now. Are there any projects you would like to promote? Something dear to you?
Mm, actually, indigenous people's projects have always been dear to me. But right now, the only thing that I want to promote, Lisa, is the sense of volunteerism, amongst the young people. For me, it would be indigenous people's rights issues, like you are doing right now. Um, so, because a lot of young people now do not understand volunteerism anymore. It's always about what's in it for me monetarily, when in fact, we should be asking what's in it for me technically as well. Because when we volunteer, see, the thing, I also started with volunteering. So it was volunteering that opened up a lot of my perspectives, which I thought, from an academic point of view, that I thought I knew it all. Because we were always trained to think that, if you have a certain degree, you kind of become, the bigger person, so to say, or the higher person. But it's voluntary. volunteerism that has kind of helped me to understand a community and communities' lives from the art of looking sideways, not just one way. And and yes, I would have loved, for more and more young people to take up storytelling. Storytelling in a sense, not that uh, we talk only about media, fashion, and what we wear. It's okay to talk about that, but let's also talk about indigenous people's history. How far have we come? The reason why you and I are here today is because of the many struggles and fights that many of our forefathers and foremothers, have done for us to be able to for us to have this platform to talk like this. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had this platform. So create that storytelling forum where young and old get together, where there is no generation gap, but also a generation stitch of how history, present, and future can be built together. So this is actually a future and still a present project that we are working on in different communities.
That's a beautiful initiative, ma'am. Especially since this is something very close to our roots, right? I've
Right,
heard from my grandmother's time. Uh, for them, this gathering around after mealtime or during mealtime next to the hearth and just sharing either daily lives or past lives, like just recalling their histories. It's something
right.
is dying out in this current generation since we're all very
Mm,
screen based and screen focused. So I love
mm,
how you're
mm,
trying to bring back something from the past, something that is innate in our lives, especially as the tribals of Meghalaya, and I'm sure other
right.
northeastern states as well. So it's I would love to see this as a comeback. I feel that it would also promote a more, I guess, a more cohesive unit, a
Mm,
more cohesive group, since we were initially quite a very group focused or group oriented society. However, in recent years, due to, I feel, foreign ideologies, especially
mm,
capitalism, we have become more profit oriented, more
right,
selfish in that sense. The ideology, the belief of altruism, that is starting to disappear in our daily lives. And one
mm,
should definitely feel afraid on what kind of society we're building for. What about, like, I know at present we, the youth, are the future. However, there's a future much further than that, which are the youth that will be upcoming. What kind of world
right.
are we creating for them? And I feel what you are trying to do with the storytelling is just bridging the gap, like you said, right? Like it's a stitch in time from the
Mm,
feelings past to something present, and it should keep living on, that heart of community. It should beat for the community.
right, right.
I feel that you have given me so much insight, ma'am, and I'm sure the viewers who tune in as well would think so. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have. I I am loathing saying goodbye to you right now, ma'am. But that has been not just an amazing and insightful interview, but I'm sure life-changing, one could say. I would like to thank you again from Advancing Northeast for your time. Thank you for the work that you do
It's
as
my
well.
pleasure.
And I hope that you keep striving forwards for Indigenous people's rights. However, I feel that your story will be heard by others and they too will strive towards the same goal that you do. Or maybe their own. I mean, one
Oh,
can't
yeah.
cage one can't cage people's interests and passions, but I feel this would help. This would help the youth find a standing ground, and you could be their moral compass or their anchor.
Anytime for my indigenous people.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much, Lisa. Thank you for
Bye-bye.
this. Take care of yourself. Bye.
Bye.